The following feature presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
This is what you can look forward to on this Countdown to Halloween, episode 391 of Skywalking Through Neverland.
My favorite time of year. I love spooky season.
This is a story that a mom could absolutely read to a child, except maybe the ending.
But no puppies were harmed in the making of my book.
Now, do you ever slip a little Leatherface into your Disney books?
I don't think I'm dark and creepy. I think I'm really cute and nice. And they're like, no, you're spooky. My grandfather was a little bit involved with Walt Disney. My dad got to meet him as a kid.
Can you please write a story that Leatherface talks Cruella out of hurting puppies?
Are you ready?
Off to Neverland!
Here we go!
Magic mirror on the wall. All the forces of evil I call.
Hello, darling. This is Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and I'm skywalking through Neverland. Are you?
Hey, Skywalkers! It's October, and do you know what that means? It's Halloween month! And the best part of our countdown to Halloween is that I can play this for Sarah.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock.
I should have known when I saw the pumpkin on your computer.
I was trying to hide it. Surprise! That's Sarah's favorite part of Halloween, is hearing that Halloween 3 jingle over and over and over
He
again.
wants it to be his ringtone, but I refuse.
Oh, come on. Oh,
No.
Come to think of it, I need my Halloween theme as my ringtone right now.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I'll do that after we
That
record.
I will accept.
Okay, good. Good. All right, now with all that out of the way, we want to welcome you back to
Skywalking Through Neverland.
I am Richard Woloski, and now everyone please say hello to my sweetie wife, Sarah, who is the Season of the Witch.
Ooh, I like being a witch. I like witches. Witches.
Maybe later on we can watch Season of the Witch.
That or Hocus Pocus 2 again. I'm down with both.
Sure. You know what Season of the Witch is.
I don't.
That's Halloween 3.
No.
Gotta keep on playing it until you love it as
That's-
much as I do.
You know what? When fandoms collide, well, with us, fandoms do not collide in terms of horror movies. You are like such a horror movie fan. I am totally not. And the Venn diagram of our relationship just parts right there.
Right, but I like the innocent horror movies. Like
Yeah.
Halloween, you barely saw any blood.
Right.
I like that. And movies that don't show the gore and the guts, because the more you see, the more you just fall out of it.
It's bad.
It's what you don't see that's what scares you, like Jaws.
I do agree with that. Yes. And I mean, you know, you've expanded my horizons a little bit with that, and I've expanded your horizons with things like Descendants, Disney Descendants. So
I watch Descendants, you
Yes.
watch Poltergeist.
there you go.
See, that's why we get along so well.
That's very true. All right, Skywalkers. Well, you are here at your enthusiastic podcast destination for the many decades of your Star Wars, Disney, and Marvel fandom. As Meredith is saying in our Sky Chat right now, this is your spooky destination for all things Star Wars, Marvel, and Disney.
Yeah. Can I do it one more time?
Not if you want your Wookiee hug.
Okay. I want a Wookiee hug. So,
Okay.
So you go away, Silver Shamrock.
Okay. All right, this Wookiee hug that we're giving you this week will banish the Silver Shamrock.
Sounds good.
Also, a little sprinkle of pixie dust to get us through the Halloween season.
Now, we are your enthusiastic podcast destination for the many decades of the Star Wars, Disney, and Marvel fandom. Did you already say that?
I did.
Okay.
I wasn't sure where you were going
so
with that.
focused on
I'm playing Halloween.
Yes.
I'm playing this jingle.
Yeah, I was trying to secretly
All
try to
right.
find the play button
Well,
again. All right.
here we are in the
I
notes.
wasn't paying attention.
Okay, that's much as obvious.
So. Okay.
I love
but you know
you,
what
though.
is obvious?
What?
That we are being sponsored by Small World Vacations, and they are a diamond level Disney vacation planner travel agency and can help you book your trip to a Disney park around the world or on the Galactic Star Cruiser. And best of all, their service is eerily free. It's so free that it's spooky. So head over there to smallworldvacations.com for a no-obligation price quote and tell them Skywalking Through Neverland sent you.
Now, we are recording this from Long Beach, California on October 4th, 2022. Richard, what happened today in Star Wars history?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because we have got to wish a big 76th happy birthday to Marsha Lucas.
Yay!
And someday we'll get her on the show.
Well, that must be in your book.
Well, yes, it is. Coming soon to a Amazon or Skywalking Through Neverland site near you. So Marsha Lucas, we all know, she was the wife of George Lucas while he was making Star Wars. She really pumped the emotion into Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi.
She was the editor, one of the editors.
Yeah. She was one of the editors who really put together the whole ending Death Star battle of Star Wars, and she's the one who said, hey, you know what? Obi-Wan's just kind of standing around the last quarter of the movie. Why don't we kill him off? No, you go and tell Alec Guinness this, okay? So, which was a great decision. Mm-hmm. And for The Empire Strikes Back, George said, hey, could you really deal with all of the emotional scenes?
Nice.
And the same for Return of the Jedi. If two characters had to really get down and deep, like the Luke and Leia discussion on the Ewok bridge, or Luke unmasking Darth Vader, that's all Marsha Lucas there. So anything that has to deal with emotion, let's get Marsha in on this.
So Marsha Lucas, then, I have to thank for my love of Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh, she cut the
Han and Leia scenes.
Han and Leia love scene on the Millennium Falcon. And I know in the Howard Kazanjian book, she's putting down all of the rest of the Star Wars films, but I think it's more because, hey, the Star Wars films are my baby, like fandom. The Star Wars films are my baby, they're my thing. Anything else is just superfluous, and I don't like it because this is mine.
All right.
And anything outside of that, someone is going to, just squish.
Right. It makes a lot of sense.
So, Marsha, irregardless, we want to wish you a big, happy 76th birthday.
Well, speaking of today in Star Wars history, you may have noticed we did not put out an episode last week, and this is because we were putting the finishing touches on Part 2, our Part 2 book proof. Woo! It's submitted! Woo! So be on the lookout, everybody, for pre-orders coming soon to our website, skywalkingthroughneverland.com. And if you're part of the Skywalking Force, we will be giving you guys a special coupon code in your Patreon inbox. So make sure to check that out.
Now, would you say that this volume has more than the first volume? I would say yes.
Yeah.
I would say most definitely yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because this last half has got a lot of Obi-Wan Kenobi stuff and Andor. We try to fit as much current day Star Wars in as possible.
I had to add a new color coding, a couple new things there. Much
to Sarah's chagrin. And I say that because, okay, Rich, the book is locked. Any new line you put in there is going to knock the whole thing out of whack, but we got to fit it in there. We've got to fit it in there.
And we did.
So
yeah.
this is going to be jam-packed with more stuff. All right. With that, let's jump right into our conversation with Vera Strange, the author of the new Once Upon a Scream.
So welcome to our Halloween celebration!
What better way to kick off our beloved Halloween season than to speak with an award-winning author of the Disney Chills series?
Vera Strange is with us to tell us about her new book, Once Upon a Scream.
Hey, Vera!
Hey guys, how's it going?
It is going great because it is now officially Halloween season over here at the Skywalking Network, and you are kicking it off.
My favorite time of year. I love spooky season.
Right, which is why I thought this is going to be perfect for you because of your Disney Chills books. But before we get into your books, let's talk about you as an author and you as a Disney fan. So tell us all about yourself. in 50 words or more.
I was gonna say, oh wow, that's a long story. Well, who isn't a Disney fan? I always say you'd have to grow up in a bubble not to know Disney, especially I think from a young age, and it implies internationally. You know, my sister-in-law's from Bolivia and still grew up watching Disney films because they speak across, I think, all areas of the world. So my grandfather was a little bit involved with Walt Disney. My dad got to meet him as a kid because my grandfather consulted on the music for Fantasia because he was a classical music guy. And if anyone knows anything about Disney, you know, he was obsessed and very into music, and especially classical. He's very passionate about it. And, you know, so I never thought I'd get to write this stuff. That's the crazy thing, you know, like you grow up, like I worked in Hollywood for the first chunk of my career. I'd studied film at Harvard and decided I wanted to work in movies and be a director. And then I showed up in Hollywood and no women direct movies. It was very clear from when I arrived that that wasn't going to be a very easy path. There wouldn't be much mentorship. So I moved more into producing and being on the studio side and executive. And I worked on a lot of pretty big book to film adaptations. I was actually the first hire at Platinum Dunes. We worked on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. I worked with Dave Scow, who wrote The Crow, to craft Leatherface's backstory. Still friends with Dave. He's the best. And then worked on the producer of Lord of the Rings, Mark Wardesky, for the head of New Line. Came on after Fellowship had opened. Worked on Two Towers, Return of the King, the glory of the New Line days. And we did a lot of other fun stuff. Like we had Philip Pullman's Dark Materials, huge fan of Philip Pullman's work, and a bunch of other stuff. And then eventually decided I wanted to start writing my own material, but I wanted to write books, not scripts, although I do write scripts. I do that. But so self-taught myself and just started writing and just figured, hey, if it's not good or if it doesn't work out, you know, I'll find out, and that's cool. There's other stuff I can do, but it's just always been that enough people have believed in my work along the way to keep me going, which is a crazy ride. And the Disney stuff has just been like, I say it's like a dream come true because they give me like some of the most iconic characters. Of course, I write all the villains. Everyone's like, yeah, dark and creepy, write creepy characters. And I'm like, I don't think I'm dark and creepy. I think I'm really cute and nice. And they're like, no, you're spooky, write spooky stories. So right now I just write all the big villains, but we all know the villains have the most fun. And, you know, usually properties, movies, TV, books are only as strong as the villain. And if you've done your job with a great villain, then they could actually become the star of their own movie. And we are seeing that with Cruella, with Maleficent. I believe there's a third film coming. Vader got a whole prequel trilogy just for Anakin, you know, so these characters are so rich and so great. And if I'm being honest, I am a huge horror fan and I love spooky and I love all of it, especially supernatural horror, or kind of a lot of the realms I get to delve in with Disney.
As impressive as all that is, one thing that really stood out was writing the backstory for Leatherface.
That was fun. That's actually in the prequel. We did the first remake with Jessica Biel and then a prequel with Jordana Brewster. And Dave Scow came in to write that for us. And Dave's just amazing. He writes a lot of horror novels, stories. He coined the term splatterpunk in the 80s. He's one of the writers that shifted horror from being 70s and like kind of moody into being pretty hardcore in the 80s. So, and he wrote The Crow, which is one of my favorite movies, so ahead of its time. Also very sad that Brandon passed in the making of the film.
Brandon Lee, the star of The Crow.
Yeah.
But very ahead of its time in terms of being a dark comic book adaptation. Just tremendously good film. And so to work with Dave was super great. And he's so kind and so sweet and so interesting. Only wears black, only goes out at night, right? Owns an iguana named Mr. Hate that lives in his living room, you know, but he's so nice. I always say these are the nicest people because, you know, they're very well adjusted because they get it all out on the page. So yeah, Leatherface is, yeah, it was fun trying to figure him out, you know, like what's his deal? Because the original movie, Toby Hooper's, which is a classic, right? Doesn't really get into that a lot. I mean, we get in the sense of the family and the survival of the town and, you know, all of that kind of stuff, but we don't really get into how Leatherface became Leatherface.
Now, do you ever slip a little Leatherface into your Disney books? Maybe someone in the background?
A little bit. The Cruella book, which I think might be the scariest of the Disney chills, just because Cruella to me is the most terrifying of all the villains. I didn't even like writing her. She's too dark even for me. I was like, she wants to murder puppies. She's like John Wick on crack. I was like, John Wick, they kill one puppy and we get 3 revenge films, right? Like Keanu just like murdering everyone. And then Cruella wants to kill 101 puppies to make a coat so she can look fashionable. Worst person in the world. Yeah. So, but the end of that, when we finally see Cruella's, I'm going to call it Cruella's workshop, a lot of the reviews have likened it to Leatherface and Leatherface's workshop because they do have in common the whole killing of the animals thing.
Oh,
If you,
oh
Yeah.
you really think about
Yeah.
Leatherface, he's from a slaughterhouse, one of those towns. And I don't know, he and Cruella, they might get along in a weird alternate universe.
Yeah, I'll say.
Maybe Leatherface can talk her out of killing puppies because you know those big hulking of mice and men type of Lenny characters. They love animals. So can you please write a story that Leatherface talks Cruella out of hurting
They'll
puppies?
teach him how to be a better seamstress and make a better fashion.
You know what? It's writing itself right now.
You're like,
You're
I
taking
admire
notes,
what you're
right?
doing, but your workmanship isn't quite fashionable enough. Let me come in here because that's her thing. She's like a fashionista, right? That's why she needs
Right.
the fur. But no puppies were harmed in the making of my book. Disney wants you guys to know no puppies were harmed in the writing of my book. They're very concerned about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, because we were about to hit the end meeting button if you'd said one puppy.
I
got
know.
hurt.
No puppy. And by the way, no animals or people were hurt in the making of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, I used to work on horror films back in the '90s, and they were so much fun to work on. And then when you look at it back, it's like, wait a minute, this is what we were making? Because we're all just laughing in between takes, doing some funny stuff with the puppets.
Oh,
and now this
good
is what it is.
Well, yeah, my favorite franchise is Hellraiser. I'm a huge Clive Barker fan. I think he's a brilliant writer. And yeah, the name Pinhead, which is the main iconic character, that's from people joking around on set. That's not the character's name. He doesn't have a name. He's just a Cenobite. And I know it's now Jamie Clayton is playing Pinhead. So stoked for the new Hulu remake. But they just started calling him Pinhead on set because they have to put all the pins and the nails in Doug Bradley's head. And the name stuck. And then when the film came out, Clive directed it. Pinhead became the iconic thing. And Clive finally wrote a book called Scarlet Gospels, where he revisited that universe. And here's the thing, don't call him Pinhead. If you want to die, tell him his name is Pinhead. He does not like that name and he will murder you. So there's like meta stuff about it actually in the book. But it all came from people joking around on the set.
You know, it's funny you should say that because I was puppeteering on these movies, Puppet Masters, and the main creature was called Pinhead. So when they would say, okay, Rich, you're going to operate Pinhead, I'm looking around going, I don't see Pinhead around. Where's it? It's right in front of you. Like, no, that's the guy with the big head, but where's I was so confused. Like, oh, okay.
What a cool gig.
You would think that they would give him a whole different name than something that was already established.
Yeah, I agree, but that's a pretty cool gig. I love all that 90s stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So the Disney Chills series.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
I know, right?
Now you know some of my reference points for how I do.
Yeah.
Yes,
Now
totally.
we know a whole bit more about
Yeah.
you.
The Disney Chills series, it's not quite as horrific. It's like your audience is more like those tweens and teens. Like reading the books, it was really fun to read. But can you tell us a little bit about Disney Chills Once Upon a Scream?
Yes, that's the most recent, which just came out in August, and it features my favorite Disney villain of all time, which is Maleficent. I used to watch Sleeping Beauty on repeat as a kid, and I remember even people would be like, well, what's your favorite, Disney movie? And I'd be like, Sleeping Beauty. They'd be like, oh, what is it you love so much about that princess? I was like, nobody cares about Aurora. If you love Sleeping Beauty, you love it for one reason, and the reason is Maleficent.
And the dragon.
Well, she becomes the dragon. Well,
Yes.
do with the dragon. She's just so fabulous, and everything about her is so extra. Like she makes an entrance, so I was actually kind of nervous to tackle her. I'm kind of glad we waited till book 6 to get this series really well developed and in a good place where I knew what I was doing with it. And it is the longest of the series so far, but I just think Maleficent needed more pages. She kind of demanded them in a way. And I just really wanted to do her justice. So the way Disney Chills works, it really is kind of like Goosebumps meets Disney villains. It is targeted at tweens, 8 to 12, but a lot of the readership spans older because Disney does have a huge fandom and there's never seems to be enough villains content for a lot of them. And, I think the books, I try to craft them in a way where they'll hold up for older readers, but, my target very much is definitely that age range. And as a kid, I loved this kind of stuff. Spooky books like, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, Christopher Pike, V.C. Andrews, and of course, R.L. Stine and Fear Street and Goosebumps. They're so delightfully fun and they're scary in a way that is still safe enough for the age range. But I think when the first book came out, one thing I have done that's super transgressive with the series, and I'm so happy that Disney let me do it, every book has a dark and terrible ending. They are all unhappily ever.
Yeah, they do.
Yes.
They do not end well. The protagonists never fare well. And I always say, well, you know, you don't want to make a deal or mess around with the Disney villain, right? That's a really bad idea. They are crafted around lessons usually that the character's learning or mistakes they've made. But yeah, I think when the first book came out, people would be getting near the end and they'd be like, well, Shelley's going to be okay. She's going to get out of this. But there's not that much pages left. What? And then people were kind of shocked, I think, with the first book. There were reviews that are like, I want to give this more stars, but I can't because I'm just so disturbed by the ending. I just don't know how to feel. And I always think, well, that's actually a 5-star review, right? They're so disturbed. I was like, I'll take it. And so now the readership and fandom, I think, expects these dark and terrible endings. And it's one of the things they read for and get excited about to figure out what the twist will be or what will happen to the main character. So yeah, Once Upon a Scream was super fun to craft. Every book is standalone, and I kind of craft it to kind of channel in the ether, but I'm setting these in the contemporary world. So my books involve Disney villains, bringing them into our world and having them haunt contemporary kids.
I love what you did with making this book relate to Sleeping Beauty without actually being a retelling of the story. Like, for instance, you have your main character, her name is Dawn.
Yes.
And I'm like, wait, and that's like Aurora, right? It's like Aurora. And then my favorite part is totally, she goes and visits her aunts in the deep south, you know, out in the boonies, and they're named Fleur and Mary,
yes,
which is Flora and Merryweather from the movie, but then they're married.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, how perfect is that? Like, of course, you know, like in Disney and all these Once Upon a Time stories, you always have like the old maiden aunts or whatever, but why not have them married and be happy together?
Well,
Now, this is what Disney should have made instead of Maleficent.
Yeah,
Something
it's so
as
cute.
an offshoot story instead of trying to retell something that we've known and had been beloved for the last couple of decades.
A big thing for me is reinventing mythology and fairy tales and myths because I love them, but I agree, for me, complete kind of retellings doesn't do a lot usually. Unless you're doing something like what George Lucas did in the Star Wars prequels, but those aren't retellings. Those are way bigger and way more complex what he was building there. So yeah, I agree. And like I'm glad that Disney let me do the queer representation. It's the first time I brought that into the series. And it, you know, I like to do this kind of stuff in a way where it doesn't feel like shoved in, where it's just kind of naturally part of the ether of the world and the story, because my stories aren't technically identity narratives, but I think representation is just really important. And we try to have that, or I try to have that, where, you know, kids can relate to different circumstances. So for example, in the first book, it's their parents are recently separated. And so suddenly they had to give up the nice house. The money is tight. Dad's in kind of not a great apartment. They're going back and forth. The parents might be getting divorced. And that's something that a lot of kids go through, right? Is that kind of circumstance of having parents kind of split up or separate or have issues in the marriage. In the Corella book, I pitched and wrote a single mother situation. And there's so many kids that do grow up in a single parent household, right? And that's very representative. In the Hades book, we did homeschooling, and that was something I wanted to do. And I got so much great fan mail, even from adults saying, if I had read this book when I was a kid, this would have been my favorite book, because I can never see myself in any stories because I was homeschooled. And this book, you know, really hit me because, wow, look at this. And there are a lot of kids for a variety of circumstances. In the case of the Hades, it's because they're training to be athletes, the whole family. So they homeschool them so they have more time to compete, which is actually something that does happen in the real world. So for this one, I am from the South. My middle name is Dawn. So I was like, oh, let's go for that. And I kind of love taking a character. So her circumstance, she's in New York in the big city, and she's kind of in that path where she has her two best friends, but they're sort of trying to slide into some not great behaviors. Nothing like horrible, but, you know, skipping school, kind of being slightly delinquent. And then a big thing happens where her friend, she doesn't do it, but her friend shoplifts from the corner store, just some nail polish, nothing like hugely expensive, but they get busted. The parents get called. And so they're concerned, and they decide that as her punishment, but also the parents want to help. They're trying to do the right thing. They're going to send her to live with her aunts in the deep South. in a small town because the schools in the city aren't that great. They're probably better down there. And they want to get her away from these influences that they think are bad, which of course in her mind is horrible because these are her best friends. And she totally doesn't agree. And all they got was their phones taken away and grounded. You know, she exile.
Say no more.
Oh yeah.
That'll devastate most kids.
Completely. So she thinks her parents are totally overreacting and being terrible people, and they can't leave because they have jobs in the city that they have to keep. So she goes to live with her two aunts, who she does have a good relationship with, actually, and they are really nice people. And yeah, it's like they just felt right to make them married to each other. You know, they own an antique store, and it just felt like so real. And, you know, even though it's the South, I love turning some of this just to say there are places, you know, even where we might have different opinions in California feel, but there are places like that. There are gay couples that live in places like that, that operate businesses that are contributing members of the community, and they are accepted. It's not everywhere that this kind of stuff happens. So I just like showing this idea of this is how it could be. Right. And I don't really dwell on it. I just like kind of show the characters and, you know, show them as fully fleshed out human beings with relationships. And that's it. And we just tell the story because it's really about Maleficent. And so, of course, Dawn shows up and she's miserable. And because usually what I do is I say, hey, what is this really about? Like, what's Maleficent really about? Like in the original Sleeping Beauty, you know, when she shows up and crashes the christening and death curses a baby, I was like, what the heck was really going on? I was like, dude, she's got FOMO. She's mad because she wasn't invited to the party. That is what ticks her off. And that's why she party crashes. She shows up. She goes, you invited the rabble, the gentry, but not me. All right, I'm death cursing your baby, essentially. And of course, it gets softened to the sleeping curse by the fairies. But I was like, yeah, that's really relatable, though. Like for kids, come on, like who cannot, you know, being left out of a party, the cool party, not being invited, and how terrible that can really make you feel. So that's pretty much what happens to Dawn. And of course, once she, you know, finds the spindle and pricks her finger, Maleficent's like, this is a situation I can understand. And yes, they deserve to pay for not inviting you and, you know, pranking you over this party. So I kind of try to find something within the villain that's relatable to this age range in a contemporary setting. And that's part of the fun of it.
And I think you did that so well. My mom would, when growing up, she would read me, you know, Grimm's fairy tales and stuff. And in her head, she told me this later. She was like, should I really read these stories to my kid? Like, what am I teaching her? But this is a story that a mom could absolutely read to a child, except maybe the ending. But
it's kind of like Old Yeller. You turn it off at the very end.
Yeah, exactly. But it was very relatable.
Traumatized me. I had an Old Yellow lab, and my like, parents, why did you let me watch this?
It's terrible.
I was
terrible.
There were two things I was very scared of as a kid that I thought would be important in my life. Rabies was one of them, thanks Old Yeller, which I've never actually encountered. And the other was quicksand. I was very concerned because of like the Never-Ending Story and the Princess Bride, that quicksand was going to be something I was going to have to grapple with and be prepared for, and as an adult, and I've never had to deal with it. So, but the rabies thing, that was from Old Yeller, and I was like, oh my God, that's so terrible. You treat the dog, geez. So yeah, the ending. This one I love because for me, you know, when I was trying to think what's the ending, and
wait, should we reveal the ending, or
well, I won't say what it is, but I will say what author inspired it. It was Edgar Allan Poe, and my favorite short story, The Cask of Amontillado. So there's a little, I was trying to channel in, you know, Edgar Allan Poe writes The Raven, Maleficent likes ravens. I just felt, I don't know why, but it just felt like that kind of stylistic thing would work in this book. And, you know, he's one of the greatest horror writers of all time.
Yeah,
this sounds very, very contemporary, which is great for Disney. But did they ever say, "Hey, let's pull back on this," because there's so much to be fearful in today's standards that how far can you go?
Well, I've been surprised. I mean, my editors have been fabulous across the board. I am on my 4th editor, but we're going into 7th book. The 7th book is in and delivered now next year. So it's a long running series at this point, and publishing tends to have a lot of moving around. But from the beginning, they've been so great. And when I read the first book, which is Part of Your Nightmare with Ursula, because they're like, well, who do you want to write first? I was like, Ursula, because she's so fabulous. You know, I was like, she is got great personality. Bless Pat Carroll, her voicing was so iconic of Ursula. I was like, she's basically a drag queen underwater. Like, she wears makeup underwater. Like, that's how like extra she is, you know.
She was based on a drag queen in the 80s.
I believe that's true because it comes through very much in the character. And she's got so much personality. She's also funny. She's so funny, you know, this very kind of dry, wisecracking sense of humor. And I love anything underwater or water stuff. So, and mermaids. I wrote Ursula first, and I just figured I'd write, you know, the book. I wasn't going to pull the scares because it's harder to make something scary if it's not scary rather than to tone it down if it's too scary. So I was like, well, they'll tell me if it's too much. And, you know, and I don't write down to kids. I write, you know, I meet them at their level. You know, I write as if I would kind of for adults. And they never, ever pulled back a scare. I just get notes like, ooh, this is so creepy. Oh, this is even creepier. Oh, wow. And the endings too. And I think when my second editor took over coming into book 3 or 4, we're doing Corella, I think, she was like, I was just recounting all the books and telling my friend about the endings. And she's like, it hadn't occurred to me how terrible all of these are until I had to start saying it out loud. And I was like, yeah, I know they are. It's pretty, and there's like fans online that they'll be like, I think only one kid made it out alive. I think just the Captain Hook kid, but his life is terrible, but he made it alive. And then someone else has a fan series they're writing where they have other Disney characters rescue my characters at the end, and they rewrite the endings to save the kids. And I get questions too sometimes about, will Disney let you do a sequel so we can like see what happens after and maybe they survive? So yeah, that's the thing is they've been so amazing about letting me kind of do what I want. I haven't really had anything like that toned down. They're actually more permissive with me being dark than Star Wars was, which surprised me because on the surface, in my mind, Star Wars is a far darker universe. I mean,
oh yeah,
the first film, like Han Solo straight up murders someone gets their arm cut off in a cantina bar. Obi-Wan gets killed.
Well, Greedo did threaten Han Solo, okay? If you're going to threaten me, I got no other choice but to shoot you.
Well, yeah, he tried to retcon it, you're right, but he shoots first. And it is in his character. He is an underworld character. He is a smuggler and he's working for a terrible crime lord, Jabba the Hutt. He's not a good guy when we meet him, and he just wants money. But yeah, so my point, yeah, so Star Wars on the surface, I mean, Vader is force strangling people. He destroys a whole planet and murders, I can't even say how many people, right? While Leia watches, he tortures the princess. Like, so on the surface, in my mind, Star Wars is a much darker universe than Disney. But in terms of actually writing, Star Wars was more concerned with that. And I was writing Vader than Disney. So that was kind of an interesting flip. Because I thought it'd be the other way around. So you never know, because we're dealing with, in these cases, brand management and, you know, big worlds and lots of different storytelling and storytellers coming in. And I'm writing canon stories. Well, my Star Wars Vader story is canon.
So you had written Darth Vader for the book Star Wars Stories of Jedi and Sith.
Yes.
So where does that take place, and what did you do with Darth Vader?
It takes place in the time frame of the Obi-Wan show, if you guys watched Obi-Wan. So kind of peak Vader is the way I like to frame it, where he's at the peak of his powers. And it's interesting because the book came out right around Obi-Wan, and it has Vader on the cover, and I did write the Vader story. And but I hadn't seen Obi-Wan, so it was kind of like crazy to watch. And I'm so grateful Hayden Christensen is back, because they felt that he got a bad deal. I actually known for defending the prequels. I actually love the prequels.
Oh, here.
Yeah, the Obi-Wan show, seeing Vader do full Vader. So I wrote that Vader, and the time frame is it's a solo mission he goes on sometime in there, because the difficulty with writing Vader is you can't touch a lot because so much was in the works and is in the works or has been done with him. But one of the things I love about Darth Vader is that he's so extra. He's such a diva. Like, he wears a cape. He like flounces around. He's the king of the backhanded put down.
But if given the choice, wouldn't you wear a big wool cape? I know I would.
He's so special. And like, he, you know, a lot of people hide behind their soldiers or he doesn't. Like, he'll just full on go out on his own, which is one of the things I love. So my story takes place on, I created a new moon. It's a jungle moon planet, and a new teen rebel Wookiee character who I really, really like, a teen girl, and a new creature in the Star Wars universe. And Vader, there's an Imperial refinery being sabotaged by rebels, and Vader is not happy and goes in solo to take care of the situation. And that's one of the things I love about him, because that's something he would totally do, you know, not just send underlings or take a huge force. He would just go in and handle it, right? And I kind of loved that about him, and I loved writing him, and just all of the things, the affectations that he has.
At what point did he meet Leatherface?
He has not yet, but I feel like he might relate to the wearing of a mask. Maybe having some facial deformities. He'd be like, I get you, bro. I get it.
And being controlled by an old man.
Yeah, completely. And having to do their bidding. I mean, Vader is a really interesting character. He is a very dark character. He's fueled by anger. I was kind of on edge and angry while I was writing him because he's just so angry. He has great put downs. That's one of the fun. I love writing his voice. I'm known for how well I write character voices. And Vader is one of the most fun to write.
Yeah, he's just right to the point.
Yeah.
They're not beating around the bush. This is what I want.
No, when they told me I was going to be writing Vader, because I didn't know what I was going to be writing, they just called me up, and the head of Lucasfilm is a fan of my Disney Chill series. I was like, well, we've liked what you've done with the villains and making them really scary again. And I was like, oh, that's cool. They're like, who do you want to write? And I didn't say it because Anakin's my favorite. I was like, they're not going to give me that. And then at the end, they're like, what about Vader? And I was like, hey, what?
There's one character left over if you want it. It's Darth Vader. You know him, right?
Yeah, you've heard of him, right? Like, he's going to be on the cover. So it was really fun. And I just really am happy with how the story came out. And I'd love to do more work in the Star Wars universe because I am known for my sci-fi writing and my world building. My first trilogy, the 13th Continuum trilogy, is a big world building sci-fi that's set up at a studio for TV right now. We're trying to hopefully get a chance to make that. It's kind of like sci-fi Game of Thrones. So I write a lot of science fiction. I have 2 sci-fi graphic novels out. So Star Wars is something that I just absolutely love and is a huge influence already on everything I do.
That's amazing.
When you were writing this, did Disney ever say, hey, let's not go there with Darth Vader? No, we can't do that, seeing how they had Obi-Wan Kenobi ready to go. We can't tell you why they can't.
They have things you're not allowed to touch that are part of the canon, like things like Kashyyyk. You can't write on Kashyyyk. You can't deal with Kyber crystals. Like there's certain things that you're not allowed because of them affecting potential canon stuff. It was funny. My first pitch went in and it was deemed too dark.
Oh.
And it came back. So I softened it, okay, fine. And
what was too dark about it?
They were like, Vader can't murder certain individuals. And then
come on, he's Darth. Have you guys not seen the movies?
That's what I said.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He's highly murdery. He enjoys murder. He actually does. And then I softened it and sent it back in. And then the note came, well, this doesn't make sense because Vader would just murder this character. I was like, yeah, I know. I'm aware. That's what I.
When he walked into that village on Obi-Wan, he's cracking necks left and right.
That's like the most.
Yeah, I think that's in his wheelhouse to kill people.
Oh yeah, especially rebels who are defying the Empire. That's pretty much his MO, right? And so, it was just interesting to me that Disney seemed less concerned than Lucas about some of these elements. And then, I think the story is still really great on its own terms, even with less murder in it. But then, when I was watching Obi-Wan, I was like, see, I was right. I was like, he totally will just go murder rando people just because he can. He gets angry. And when he gets angry, then we all know, we saw the prequels, right? When Anakin gets angry, bad things happen, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When I went to see what I loved about Revenge of the Sith, and I was really impressed by George Lucas. It's obviously pre-Disney. Because, you're sitting here saying Anakin is pretty great. So what is it that he can't come back from? What is the turn, the thing that the transgression you can't be redeemed from? And it's when he goes, and this Obi-Wan meditates heavily on this, when he goes to the temple and he kills the Padawan and he murders children in cold blood. And when that was happening and I was in the theater on opening night, I was like, oh, are they going to go there? Are they doing this? Like, is George? And I was like, they just did. And they did it. But it works because it is the thing. That is the thing you can't come back from. That is what will turn you. And I teach a lot about villains and how to write them because some villains are redeemable. Some can turn or at least soften. And there are what I call irredeemable villains. And that's usually if they've transgressed too far. And killing in cold blood is the big one. Killing children is another big one, right? This is why Voldemort is not redeemable. Sauron is not redeemable. But if we're in Harry Potter, Draco Malfoy is ultimately redeemable, potentially. Never killed anyone. He's a kid, and he does turn a little. So Vader is not redeemable, right? I know we get this whole thing at the end where he saves Luke, but he still has to die. It's the King Kong rule. Monster must die. If you've transgressed too far, you still have to pay for your sins. So Vader, we see him come back to Anakin, but he still has to die.
Oh, after Revenge of the Sith, you cannot watch Star Wars the same way again.
Oh, no.
When Vader walks through the blockade runner doors, that shot that made every kid just cower in fear. Now you look at it and go, oh, that poor man, that poor Anakin Skywalker inside this iron lung. He's just so twisted by Palpatine that he's running his whole life based on a lie that he killed Padme.
Well, I think he did kill Padme. I'll get into that, but I think for me, what it really did is it made me love Return of the Jedi so much more because, when I'd seen it as a kid, and I still love the Ewoks. I absolutely love them. And people are like, they're too cute and sweet. I'm like, no, they're murder cannibals. They were going to eat them. They were going to cook them, barbecue them. They had R2 and Han on a spit. They were fully down to murder and eat. Okay. So where
did Leia's Ewok dress come from?
Right. Exactly.
Clearly another person that they ate.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're, and they take down a bunch of like Imperial stormtroopers and whatnot. So, but it refocused it on the scenes between Vader and Luke. And there's a lot of those. And it made me appreciate that so much more. But I think he did kill Padme. I think he crushed her internally is what happened. Because when he goes all like I think in his anger so out of control, I think that what he did is what killed her. It put her into labor and I think ultimately killed her. It's, and to some degree, the Emperor, I think, is feeding off her life force. That's the other thing that's going on a little bit to bring Vader back to life in a sense. But I think Anakin did in that moment pretty severe damage to her, on the inside. So that's my opinion.
In the big umbrella of a picture, it was all Palpatine just twisting his mind.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And believing that Obi-Wan was the real villain here, and his mind he just snapped. And if it hadn't been for Palpatine feeding him all these lies and demented truths, Padme would still be with us.
These character relationships are my favorite, because Star Wars really is space opera, which is Greek tragedy, and Greek tragedy is always about family. So I always talk about how Star Wars, the original core of the thing is the Skywalker family tragedy in outer space. That's all it is. It's Shakespeare. It's Greek tragedy. It's the sons repeat the sins of the fathers. And I think in terms of those newer films, that's where they went very wrong, is they tried to make it not about the Skywalkers. And to my mind, it falls apart. And then they try to, at the end, scramble and make it about, and it just didn't work. But I have a whole theory. I think, Luke should have been the bad guy in the new films. Luke should have gone dark and been the new Skywalker. I have a whole theory of what I would pitch to have done that I think would have worked really well. So television is much more novelistic, and I say this as a novelist, and which is the fun, is the depth of it. Movies need to have a really focused through line and a really focused kind of agenda, to lack of a better word. And that's why the originals, Skywalker family tragedy in outer space, it was all about the family. If you really meditate on the core of it. And the new films, they tried to pull away from that and they kind of fell apart. And then they circle back to trying to make it about, Rise of Skywalker. But, they didn't really have a plan for the trilogy. That was the other problem. They kind of went in, and after the second movie went kind of south and broke a lot of canon, in my opinion, again, they were scrambling to try to come up with, they didn't know who Rey was. And I just can't imagine writing a series like that and not knowing my main character's backstory. And the fundamental, because that's the fundamental question it begins with, who is Rey? So how do you begin that without knowing?
There's so many shakeups to the production schedule and releases, and I think they were just trying to focus too much on that, and let's just hurry up and get it done, rather than trying to let's put it down and really figure this all out. Last Jedi was a fantastic solo film.
Yeah,
a fantastic film out of the Skywalker saga. It didn't really follow the Star Wars conventions. The Rise of Skywalker is the sequel to The Force Awakens.
Yeah, that's the other weird part, right?
Yes.
We can agree on that there's so many things I could say about it. And, the thing as a fan is I always want these things to be good. I'm not a hater. I always want any of these things they come to, I want them to be fabulous. And I'm always just saddened because the potential with something like that is so big. But that's what they should have listened to me and made Luke Skywalker the new villain. It's all seeded in. If you don't complete your
But then you would have gotten all these fanboys saying you're corrupting my childhood. You're turning my childhood hero into a villain without thinking it through. Like, hey, maybe that's a good idea.
But that's what he did with Anakin. I mean, we meet this cute little blonde boy, and look at the journey we take Anakin on. You have to have some teeth. That's why we could go back to the Grimm fairy tales, or I think Disney. I was rewatching. I saw this video on TikTok where this adorable little girl, I don't know, maybe 3 years old, and her dad's filming her watching the scene from Lion King where Mufasa dies. And she's so cute. And he's like, this is the hardest thing as a parent to watch this. And she's like, oh, daddy's gonna save him. Daddy save him. Oh, daddy in trouble. Daddy fall. And then she's like, Scar save daddy. Scar is gonna save daddy. And then you just see her face because we all know, but they experience the first time. And she goes, oh, daddy's just tired. He's just laid down because he's tired. Simba save him now. Simba get mommy. And you're just like, oh, poor kid, right? But that's what I'm saying. Like Disney, but Disney is known for murdering parents and going really dark into some of the stuff. Like it's Hamlet.
That Bambi scene is
I'm
traumatic.
still scarred from Bambi.
Yeah.
Serena Valentino and I did a virtual event for our books that came out, and we were both talking about how Bambi completely traumatized us. I think it's the first Disney film I saw in theaters, and I live in an area where there's a lot of hunting, and I was like,
The same thing happened to me, and then you go outside and you're driving around and you see vehicles with the dead deer strapped on top, and I was like completely traumatized.
No, I'm still upset about it, and it's in looking back on it, because having revisited Lion King too, it's so beautifully handled. It's gorgeously done in these films, but it is, if you really think about, super dark stuff. We also talked about Cruella de Vil. They're handling things, even though they're quote kids movies, but Grimm fairy tales are the same way. And so I think, if Star Wars tries to shy away from some of that darkness, they'll falter. They need to lean in. And I thought that Obi-Wan Kenobi does that. Mandalorian does that. The TV shows have done a better job, I think, of embracing the core of what it really is.
Yeah.
I loved Kylo Ren. I thought he was a fantastic character because he's that type of kid that can't communicate. So what do? They just enact violence. They just start thrashing everything around them.
Yeah, but see, here's my problem. And this is why I think Luke should have been the villain. So here's my pitch. So Force Awakens should have been, the first half is fine. And then what it is okay, we've got Kylo Ren as a character. And remember I talked about what can turn Anakin so dark that this is believable that he becomes Vader. Well, my problem with Kylo Ren is we don't ever see anything that accounts for this. I'm like, dude, your parents are Luke and Leia. I get it. They didn't stay together. They're still objectively pretty awesome people. Right. And maybe Han's off solo adventuring or doing whatever, but Leia's a good mom. You cannot convince me that Leia Organa was not a good mother. So what made him so dark when he went to train with Luke? And my pitch is, what would have explained turning him if the reveal was that Snoke was actually Sith Lord Skywalker? And the end of Force Awakens, as the hood comes down and we see who twisted him was Luke himself. His uncle would have been the Palpatine. He's the only thing. What else could have been powerful enough to turn a kid like Kylo Ren, especially at such a young age?
Well, he kind of did, because they sent him off to boarding school, which is the Jedi Academy, and Luke is not a parent, and feeling this dark power and energy from Ben Solo, tries to kill him.
Yeah, he tries to murder him for a minute, but that doesn't work for me either, because I'm like, this is Luke Skywalker, who is like, Vader, there's still good in you. And everyone's like, Luke, you're absolutely out of your mind. Vader is the worst, twisted, most horrible villain. He's like, no, I'm going to turn him. So he sees some darkness in his little nephew, and he's like, I'm just going to murder him right now. It just, to me, that doesn't track with Luke and what we've seen Luke do, which is he saved Vader. What? And Vader is scarier than Kylo Ren on a bad day even, right? This is my pitch. And I think you needed something to justify. And I think I've heard now this is what George intended, actually, and it got thrown out when JJ came on board. And JJ wanted to do another Death Star, and George was like, that doesn't make sense. That's not going to work. They've already tried it twice. And so but JJ wanted to redo the Death Star instead. So that's what we got. This is what I've heard.
Interesting.
So
yeah,
that's my whole pitch. But you're right. People would have been very upset, but it would have broken the internet.
Yes.
Mark Hamill would have been down to do this. He plays great villains. He voiced Chucky. He voiced Joker. Mark could have killed that performance.
Oh, he was great in a movie called Slipstream back in the late 80s, where he played a bounty hunter.
But just picture picture him throwing the hood down and he's now Sith Lord Luke Skywalker. And then suddenly what you've set up is brother versus sister, right? And again, we're in the family.
Yeah.
In Greek tragedy, the son doesn't want to. This is like your Oedipus, but repeats the sins of the father. And it's all in Return of the Jedi. If you don't finish your training, Luke, your weakness is your friends, your weakness is attachment. That's the big criticism, right? And so we go 30 years later and Luke's gone. Well, where is he? What happened to him? And the reveal is he went dark, like his dad.
That's good. So if you could do a full-on Disney or Star Wars chills series, like for adults, like horror, whatever, like what would be your pitch for that?
To like kind of age it up or do something a little darker. I don't know. I think it'd be really fun to do something with some of the villains interacting in different capacities. Serena Valentino has a great series, though, that kind of, you know, her stories aren't canon, but they're really fabulous if you haven't explored her books. But yeah, I don't know what I do. I'd have to think about it. I have so many things I'd love, you know, I'm curious about like King Triton and Ursula. I was like, I feel like they had a relationship. And I don't think Triton is as good as he tries to act like he is. Something went down back in that ocean, you know, and I kind of want to know more about what happened with him and Ursula when they were younger. That would be fun to write. I have some other ideas. I have something I want to do with Sleeping Beauty that I'm kicking around right now that I would love to do something with. It would be skew a little bit older and be a way to do a new fantasy and not a retelling, because I don't like doing retellings. I think we mentioned that. I like taking kind of the tenets of stories and contemporizing them or setting them in different ways to kind of explore them more in depthly. And Star Wars, it's like, I'll just write whatever. If they like want me to write something else, hopefully they'll come knocking. Just anything, because I love the universe so much and the complexity of it. And I'm all excited about how they're building out and publishing so much with the High Republic books. Yeah, it's clearly going to be the scaffolding they're going to start to build TV and film on top of. And it's just really smart to do all that world building, because you start to see when that doesn't exist. Some shows like Rings of Power and House of Dragons aren't what they should be, because the infrastructure isn't quite underneath them to sustain the story. So they kind of have this unevenness.
You know what will really help make you stand out? If you add hoojibs. You've got to add hoojibs to your next story.
You know, there's like so many fun little characters. Like Baba Freak, I think, is so amazing. Even though Baba Freak like pops up like three different, like not very much.
Yeah, he's right over here.
Well, there you go.
Then you really got to mine characters from the Ewoks and Droid series and Marvel, because there's so many great characters just sitting out there doing nothing. And to have them pulled back into canon would make my head just melt with gooey ooze.
It would be fun to do like a little weird sub-series of just kind of like the secondary, like the very, like it's almost like the cameo characters, and like let them have their own world. It'd be kind of fun.
You add Jackson in there, that's money in the bank.
Yeah, I know. For me, I just want to write, like I like writing all like the worst and terrible of the characters. The villains are the most fun, and they have the most fun, you know. So, but Disney has the greatest staple of villains, and that's why, you know, we just delivered book 7. We're not announcing the villain yet, but this villain was so fun to write. It's one of the bigger and more iconic ones from Disney. More fun than I even thought this villain would be. But I'd like to do more.
Is it Sid?
Huh?
Is it Sid? The villain
from Toy Story?
No, I don't do Pixar. I don't know if that's technically considered part of the Disney canon for the villains, but it is someone that everyone knows, that you well know. It is from one of what I think is one of their best films of all time. Most people believe that about this.
Is it Grumpy?
No, it's not Grumpy.
Okay,
it's much more. It's a much more, like, I would say, mainstream of like, if you're gonna like stack up their big villains, this is one of the ones. And we're going to continue to get iterations of this villain, because they are revisiting a lot of the films. Obviously, we know Little Mermaid's coming, right?
Is it Mother Gothel?
I would love to write her. It's a male villain. I tend to alternate. So we want more books. My editor does too. So I'll see if they give me more, because there's quite frankly just more villains. I haven't written Evil Queen. Oh my God, do I want to write Evil Queen?
I bet.
Almost the third book. Mother Gothel was almost the third book, but it ended up being Captain Hook.
Okay.
Which I was down to write. It was more Disney was like, who do you want to write? And we had this whole list. And I was like, well, you guys do marketing and research. Like, who's popular with this age range of readers? Like, what villains are they most into? Captain Hook, because of this Jake and the Neverland Pirates show that was on when they were little kids, which was a really big deal for this generation. Well, now they're tweens, they're older, but they love Captain Hook stuff. And I love pirates. So I was like, super down to write Hook. So yeah, there's just so many villains that I haven't done yet that I would love to do, because there's at least 3 to 5 to 7 more that I haven't even touched. So
Yeah.
So
well,
it-
where can we get Disney Chills and your Once Upon a Scream book?
right, so they're available pretty much everywhere. Barnes and Noble, I know, has a bunch of displays for the series now for spooky season, which is like, I've been like displaying my books special with like Goosebumps and the stuff I grew up with, and like Bunnicula. I used to be obsessed with Bunnicula.
Oh, I loved Bunnicula.
I know, my books like all with these like books that I just love. So they definitely have the series. Pretty much any Barnes and Noble, Amazon obviously carries it. If your Barnes and Noble is not stocking the 6th book, because sometimes they will only stock the first bunch of a series, anyone can order this book for you if it's not in stock. Barnes and Noble absolutely has it online, Amazon, so pretty much anywhere books are sold. I did sign some stock for Dark Delicacies, which is one of my favorite books.
Oh, in Burbank.
I always go in and sign for them. And they have so much great memorabilia.
Oh, you were just there on August 13th, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
I'm good with dates.
No, I was gonna say, wow, that's amazing. I was like, I don't even know if I remember that, but yes, I was there. And so I usually will go in and sign a whole bunch of Disney Chills. So you can always check to see if they have some in stock. And I signed a bunch from Mysterious Galaxy in San Diego, one of my other favorite indie bookstores. So they might still have some signed copies. And I have a big promo going live this week with another fellow Star Wars author, and I will be giving away Once Upon a Scream signed, along with some signed Star Wars books from this other author, because she has a new book out. So if you want to hop on my mailing list or check me out on socials this week, this big giveaway is going to go live.
So where can they find you on the social medias so they can get that?
My website is jenniferbrody.com, and the easiest thing is to obviously sign up for my mailing list. And I tend to give away a lot of signed books and fun things every month, so it's a good place to hang out with me. And then on Twitter, I'm at Jennifer Brody. And then I'm at Jennifer Brody Writer on Instagram and Facebook, and at Jennifer Brody or at Vera Strange on TikTok, depending on your flavor. So,
Wait a minute, Jennifer Brody. Who's this all of a sudden?
No, it's my real name. Vera Strange is a pen name. Shocking.
Well, we will make sure to link all of that in our show notes so that everyone listening can find that. And yeah, we can enter your contest, because I want to enter this contest now. Sounds amazing.
And like, I think I can probably, because this podcast won't drop until a day or
Thursday.
two now.
Thursday.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, so it's with Beth Revis. If you guys know who Beth is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Princess and the Scoundrel.
Yeah, so her Princess and the Scoundrel just came out. I've known Beth for a while. I mean, I think she's a fabulous writer. She's written some awesome Star Wars. I think she wrote Rebel Rising also. So we will be giving away a signed copy of Princess and the Scoundrel, signed of her debut, signed Once Upon a Scream. And the promo regards that we're both writing for Kindle Vella, and we both have episodic stories on, and Amazon's about to make Vella the platform, this new beta testing reading platform, free for the next week and a half. So anyone who wants to check out our stories that are up on Kindle Vella, and we each have one, you can read for free and also enter our giveaway to win all that signed big prize swag I just mentioned. And part of it's just fun because I think Beth's amazing, just trying to get more eyes. She has a story called Museum of Magic, and I have a book called Malibu Rising. We're both up on Kindle Vella.
I thought we were busy.
I know. That's amazing.
Always a thing, I just delivered another secret Disney project on Friday. So I do have something else coming out next year besides Disney Chill 7. I have another Disney thing coming out, which is still secret, but it's going to be really
What is it? What is it?
I can't say. It's a different universe, but it is a character that I've gone on record saying I've wanted to write for a while. So I was super thrilled when they let me touch this character.
And that character's name rhymes with?
I will just say that this is another one of those properties. If you ask any 3 to 5 year old about this, they'll be very excited. It is something that was a big hit for Disney and continues to resonate, and it has an anniversary coming up next year.
Are you writing for Paw Patrol?
Frozen.
No, not Paw Patrol. And I can't say
Frozen. I'm thinking Frozen because it came out in 2013.
Frozen is an amazing movie, and I have a whole theory on all of that. But Elsa is a queen. She's iconic to me. But they have so many good movies, right? It's hard to choose because
it
could be any of them. That's one of the fun things. I think there's so many eras of Disney that have had great films. Like even stuff like, I feel like Hercules is underappreciated. That's why I'm glad they're going to redo it, because it came out right with Lion King, and I feel like Lion King blew up more.
Yes.
But Hades is one of my favorite Disney characters.
Well, we
He's
will have
pretty
to
fun.
have you back to talk about theories because we're not done talking about Obi-Wan
Yeah.
and Padme.
No kidding.
I'm happy to come talk about any Star Wars. I will just reiterate, these were my own opinions as a fan, a reader, a viewer. My story is canon and does stand alone, but when I'm giving you all my Obi-Wan theories, that's just me because I absolutely love this stuff and I love consuming all Star Wars content basically, and that includes before I wrote for them. So that's why it's such a dream job.
Awesome. Well, Vera, Jennifer, thank you for joining us. And you're welcome anytime. We do on Friday nights, we do like a Zoom chat with just our listeners. It would be fun to like have you hang out with us. And
yeah, hit me up because I
okay.
can sit around and talk about this stuff. I could give probably like a 3-hour lecture on Revenge of the Sith without even trying, just because I love it so much, you know. So I love talking about this stuff. It's just absolutely a joy for me.
Once again, you're preaching to the choir when you want to rave about the prequels.
Yeah.
Thank you. So fun talking to you guys. You guys are awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And it was, just a joy to talk with you.
Absolutely.
And happy Halloween.
Shout outs, Skywalker shout outs. Which Skywalkers get props from here in Neverland? Who was tweeted out? Shout out. Who was photobombed? Shout out. Who was shared a post? Shout out.
It's time for shout outs, and you know what that means? We gotta shout out all of the Skywalking Force because it's the beginning of the month. What month is it?
October.
Halloween month.
Yes, it is. So we want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Anthony Kakias,
Blake from the Blake and Sal Show.
Blessed Cheesemaker,
Bryn McKinnon.
Carl Fox.
You know what we need to do? Like, we need to horrorize these like they do on The Simpsons.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Put like a fun adjective. Didn't think about that until right now, so it'll take too long to figure out. So where are we here?
Carol Cantwell.
Creepy Carol Cantwell. Hey,
Oh.
it writes itself.
Cheekafant.
Creepy Christopher Marino. All right, not the best idea. Say it.
Kooky Courtney Turkle. Turkel. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Delirious Darren Irvine.
Now I have to think of a bunch of D words.
Demented Dave Kerwin.
I need a thesaurus. I can't. It's the afternoon. My thoughts are like gone. Delirious. Did you say that? Delirious Don Glover.
Well, use it again. It's a good word.
Gruesome Garrett Sessions.
Oh, there you go. Goofy Glenn Stein. Hey, Glenn.
Jay.
Run. Jeff Long. Jumpin' Jeff Long. Just run with it.
Jack-o'-lantern Jennifer Cole.
Oh, see, there you go. Keep it going.
There's a lot of J's.
Jeremy and Heather Hunt.
Jeremy Stevenson.
John Liang.
John Zancanaro.
Julie Caruana.
Okay, now we got a K.
We said Cookie already.
Yeah. K. You guys gotta help us here.
we need a spooky K word. Killer Kelly Turkel.
Oh man.
Lovable Laura Bryce. Ludicrous Lisa Barry.
Yeah, I was gonna say loony. Meredith.
Murderous.
Murderous Meredith. Melancholy Michael Corbett.
Sure.
I mean, that's kind of Halloween-y, right?
Oh, okay.
Maleficent. No, I don't. That's not a
Maleficent
word.
Michael Nip.
There we go.
Need another M. Mad Mike Sanders.
Melodious Mike Ward. Wait, that didn't make sense at all, but that's okay.
N. Need an N.
All I can think of is nice, which is bad. 9-inch nails. No.
Nancy Steinman. We need a P word. Oh boy.
Oh my gosh, this is hard, you guys. We gotta come. What's up with my phone? Perfidious. Patricia Vittori.
Thank you, Cora of Amber. Need another P word quick. Another P hunting word. P. Phantom Patrick Pine.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. We have Patty Hammond.
Yep. Oh, here we go. Petrified Patty Hammond.
Okay, another P word.
Party. Party Patty
Party
Nazarian.
with Patty Nazarian.
Yep. I still like Perfidious again. Oh, Patricia's watching us. Yay, Patricia. I like Perfidious Peter and Norma Heitman. We'll do that again.
All right. Ridiculous Reynold Gobet.
Oh, nice. Spider Scott Carmichael.
Scary Scott Hume.
Oh, darn, no more S's.
Terrifying Terry Lee.
Oh, there we go.
Wicked Wayne Kwong.
Oh, dude, you're on a roll. Weird Wesley McCombs.
And
Werewolf.
Win the Werewolf Patterson. Oh. That wasn't too bad.
I hope you guys enjoyed that. So I feel like we didn't give who do we
The A's and the B's.
Oh, right. Okay. So alarming Anthony Cacias. Okay, Blake. Blood curdling Blake from the Blake and Sal show, and bizarre Blessed Cheesemaker, and Broomstick Bryn McKinnon.
Oh, okay.
That's so cute.
I'm happy with all of that.
Okay.
Okay.
Abhorrent.
We won't cut any of that nonsense out.
No, that was fun. I love it. And we just want to give a huge thank you to the Skywalking Force. You help us every month.
We're paying for the
Thank
uploads of all of these shows up on Libsyn.
On the Skywalking Network.
That ain't cheap.
No.
So thank you. That's where you're... Once again, I always like telling the Skywalking Force where their funds are going.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, so thank you so much, you guys. You really help us out each month. And also the time that we devote to putting out the show and all of our shows each week or each month. That is just so helpful. It does... Yeah. There's no words.
It means the world. And
yes.
thank you, and thank you once again. Well, that wraps up episode 391 of
Skywalking Through Neverland.
We want to thank Vera Strange, or was it Jennifer Brody? We want to thank her for joining us, and we want to thank Patricia Vittori, who we think is still in the chat over here, for setting up our discussion with Vera. And that was one of the most fun discussions we've had in a long, long time. When you talk horror movie villains, you can't go wrong. And we want to thank all of you Skywalkers for listening, for hanging in there with our weird schedule.
Yes.
And for coming onto our last minute recordings of our wraparounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't know we were going to do this until you knew it.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for turning on your notifications, all of you Skywalkers who showed up right now. We really appreciate it. Are you guys interested in our book, Today in Star Wars History, Part 1?
Or Part 2?
Well, Part 1 is now available on Amazon, or it's available on our website, and very soon, Part 2 will be available for pre-order. Woohoo! So look for that.
Now, we'd also want to thank our sponsor, Small World Vacations, for their continued support. Thinking of a trip to a Disney park? Maybe in November, like us?
Yeah.
Well, you can fill out a Get a Quote form at smallworldvacations.com today. Their vacation planning travel service is free of charge, so check it out and tell them who sent us.
Skywalking Through Neverland.
Or Skynet.
Everyone, we're waiting on you. Now, would you like to support Skywalking Through Neverland and get a shout out each month on the show? Well, you can consider supporting us through the Skywalking Force, which is our Patreon. You guys have access to bonus content in the form of our Zoom discussions that are recorded on the latest Disney Plus shows, such as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ms. Marvel. Right now we're doing She-Hulk and Andor.
And in a couple of weeks, we'll be doing Tales of the Jedi.
Yes. Well, also, if you're part of the Skywalking Force right now, you will be getting a coupon code to use to purchase Part 1 and or Part 2 of our book, Today in Star Wars History. And this bonus content, it begins at only $5 a month, so head to skywalkingforce.com and have a look at the options available. And thank you guys to those of you who are already part of the Skywalking Force. And now I want to give you guys a little preview. Although if you're listening to this on Thursday, you might see it. But Richard and I and a bunch of Skywalkers are going to be at the Oogie Boogie Bash. And we have some outfits planned. And I'm very excited. Because with our books coming out, part 1 and part 2, I'm going to be a newsie with my friend Bryn McKinnon. We're going to be newsies. We're going to be running around DCA with little newspapers proclaiming that part 2 is available soon. I'm so excited.
You'll be running around with what?
Papes. I'm sorry, with papes. Papes. I'm so excited. So, gotta look for those pictures and video because I'm gonna enlist Richard to be our picture and video taker.
Well, I'll be Party Thor.
That too.
I'll be partying it up.
But you're also gonna be Party Thor with the camera.
I'm always Party Thor with the camera.
I know. It's true. Seize the day. Yes. I'm so excited.
All right, now we are part of the Skywalking Network.
Skynet.
Where you can find other great shows like Talking Apes,
The Max Effects Podcast,
The Neverland Clubhouse,
and the Neverland Clubhouse. We just put out an episode on D23 Expo. Now, I know you're saying, oh my gosh, it's been so long since D23 Expo, but this is going to be a really good companion piece to our Skywalking D23 Expo content because we go over some of the panels that we did not go over in our previous content, like the Disney branded channel content and stuff like the Muppets Mayhem and things. So it's really fun. Make sure you give that a listen. Neverland Clubhouse.
Totally Tell Me Everything,
Star Warsologies. And there's another show coming out tomorrow for Star Warsologies all about holograms in Star Wars.
Halloween and Star Wars.
Holograms.
I hear what I want to hear.
I know.
But holograms are fun too. And the YouTube shows, Collectopolis, and there's a really fun show coming up with Thomas Spina. Got to give a huge shout out to Kevin Toft and Ernie Moreno. They did a really good show and a really fun discussion with our good friend Tom Spina.
Awesome. Well, we are very excited about Halloween season. So make sure to follow us on social media, everyone. We are at Skywalking Pod for Twitter and Instagram. And we also have our Facebook group. So search Facebook for Skywalking Through Neverland. Request to join the group. Like the page. We love it when you do that. And you can also email us, share@skywalkingthroughneverland.com.
Now, don't forget to stick around for bloopers and other fun bits that didn't make it into the show. And speaking of social media, watch our Instagram because on Thursday we're going to be blowing it up with a lot of Oogie Boogie videos.
Woohoo! Yeah, the Turkells will be there as well. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Now, always remember to what?
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween.
Turn it off. No. Never remember that.
We'll remember next week.
Neverland on Alderaan.
Some imagination, huh?
To our Skywalkers and Tweetwalkers, thanks for listening. Skywalking Through Neverland is created and produced by Richard and Sarah Woloski. Original music by Rob Dellinger. Creative consultant Mark Augushowitz. Technical advisor Peter Heitman. Facebook administrators Donald Wicks, Joey Pittman, and Norma Heitman.
Skywalking Through Neverland is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Any sounds, music, and clips played during this podcast are the property of their copyright holders. All original content is property of Skywalking Through Neverland, all rights reserved. Sorry, had to be said.
Because they felt that he got a bad deal. I actually known for defending the prequels, actually loved the prequels. And I've been, yeah, for years, even on podcasts before I was writing this kind of for them, I would always, and people would just get on me about it. And I was like, no, I understand the weaknesses. I know that, you know, George Lucas isn't the greatest director. And I know that the chemistry is lacking between, you know, our leads and that stuff. But overall, the stories are so incredibly strong. The world building is phenomenal. The visual storytelling is phenomenal. And, you know, everyone gave him a hard time for Clone Wars. They were like, why are you making a cartoon, George? A CGI cartoon? No one's going to care about that. No one's going to watch it. You're just pandering. And lo and behold, what do most Star Wars fans love now? Clone Wars? Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's their entry points.
He was building the architecture of that whole time frame out. and the great fall character arc of Anakin to Vader, which I'm obsessed with, and I'm obsessed with Revenge of the Sith, especially the second half of the film. I think it's mind-blowingly good. So anywho, so like seeing Vader and Obi-Wan come back together on their show was very powerful, I thought, for me. I know some people are mixed on it. I don't know. The fandom tends to be a little, it's like you give them things they should love and they just kind of find ways to not be happy, which I always think is so strange because I'm just a fan and I just really like it. She would. I mean, I do think Obi-Wan was absolutely in love with her, and I have my own theory. Yes, and I have my own theories where I think they may have even been together. I don't know, but yes, I think Obi-Wan. I think that in the Obi-Wan show is pretty clear. He loves her. He still loves her, but he has this kind of monk-like thing, right, where he's not allowed to have relationships. I mean, this is really a dissection of the Jedi, right? And that's the criticism, right, that this is not healthy ultimately. Mandalorian gets into that a little bit, I think, with Grogu, because I was kind of mad at Luke. I was low-key mad at Luke, how he treated little Grogu. I was like, this little guy's been through a lot. I was like, what do you mean he's got to choose between his Beskar armor and his little baby lightsaber? I was like, come on, let the little guy have both. He can be like Frodo with Sting and his mithril. I was like, give him both of those things and let him battle. But I think that what they were trying to do in that part of Mandalorian was show the austerity of the Jedi and why it ultimately fails, because we all know in seeing Luke's temple built that Kylo Ren is coming eventually. And I remember when Grogu first went there, I was like, you better get out before freaking Kylo Ren shows up, because, you know, I'm not going to do well with Grogu being dead. I'm just so attached to the little guy. So
they would never kill off Grogu.
Unless you do it in another, Star Wars Chills series.
No, I can't. I love him too much.
Not only would that irate so many fans because Grogu brought fans back together again, but the merchandising they would lose in the billions. They would never sacrifice.
No, they won't. But I think the interesting thing was just to say, Luke does build this temple, but the philosophy ultimately fails. And I think that there is this question of the Jedi faith or religion, whatever you want to call it, that is explored in the prequels and in other parts of Star Wars. It's the austerity. It's clearly based on some Buddhism and a couple tenets from other things. And, that's really the Sith versus the Jedi, what the dissection is. And, some of it is like, you're not supposed to have relationships. Like, you're not supposed to fall in love. But you can also see why that's a very cold and difficult way to live. And so, I think Obi-Wan was very in love with Padme, and I think still is. And I think you see that in the Obi-Wan show. And this is my opinion and my interpretation of the character. But I think...
Yeah, I think he's still carrying a torch for Duchess Satine.
Maybe. No, I think... Well, Padme was so fabulous. I mean, it's like...
yeah, but I don't...
we can talk with you for hours about the storytelling. Like, I love this.
She wanted like the edgier,
Well, yeah, she did. Yeah, she was into the motorcycle
when
riding.
Obi-Wan was alone with Padme in Revenge of the Sith, when he says Anakin is the father, isn't he?
Right.
I think we would have seen a little bit more of a, hey, I know we've been together, but Padme... I don't know
if he...
Something would have been referred to it.
I think he was in love with her, though. And I think that, but he would never voice that, see? Like, because that's how Obi-Wan is. He even, he stays on Tatooine to watch over Luke the whole time, yet stays away to protect him. You know what kind of self-control and austerity that would even take. And part of why I think he does all of this is he, again, loves Padme, and this is her child. And we see this in Obi-Wan also with Leia coming into the picture, right, in their relationship. In some ways, he is the surrogate father, because Vader is completely incapable of being a dad, obviously. Although those little picture books are funny. With
the Vader and Sons?
Yes. But, he can't parent. So Obi-Wan really is the surrogate father for both of them. And I think that was really made clear in Obi-Wan, because we didn't know the Leia piece, although I always suspected it because of what happened in the original Star Wars film, where she said, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope and all this. So we knew she had to have known him in some capacity. So I think we got to see him kind of do that for both of them.
All right. Thank you so much.
We're going to go on.
I know.
It's night.
Yeah, right.
I know. We'll have to do another one sometime.